like digital was already coming, I would say coming for the industry, but it was the industry was evolving from a traditionally linear industry to a digital industry already. And we saw that happen. And what was the result of that? The result of that was consolidation. We're seeing that throughout the industry. Legacy linear structures can't support the digital infrastructure, which is by definition different. And we are moving that direction. So you're seeing a massive change in the actual infrastructure supporting what was the traditional linear infrastructure. And now throw AI on top of that, you're going to see an accelerated change to the industry that will be, it will be significant. We're seeing that, we're seeing that today. It's allowing people and companies to move at impressive speeds. It's allowing folks to do a lot more with a lot less. So if you're more of a legacy system that has a lot of human bodies supporting a legacy infrastructure, I think it will maybe a difficult time over the next 18 months or so. It won't solve all of the problems. I think you'll still need humans to interact and do what we do every day. This is going to still be important, but it will allow those that use AI to advance faster than those that don't.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the eMarketing Association Power Marketing Podcasts. Here's Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Lee with the eMarketing Association. I also run an agency, Did It. I own a brand, Truth Nutrition, and a bunch of other stuff, including some nonprofits. So I'm pretty busy. The common theme, though, of course, for everything is advertising and marketing. So super excited to be on today with Bryan Goski, who is the Chief Revenue Officer at VideoAmp. So let's kick things off with sort of the targeting question, which comes up a lot in our industry, and it means different things to different people. So how are you guys defining targeting today?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head that it means different things to different people. So defining it's a great starting point. Traditionally targeting, especially I think in the linear TV world, started with finding the right audience to put on a media plan that you would buy against. And that was mainly because it was harder to connect data sets to, let's say, exact ads and target them in real time as we do today. And so the targeting's had sort of an evolution over time. I think I know that's still in practice today, making sure that there's the right target or let's call it segment, is another way to say it, within a traditional linear media plan. And then that's evolved to being able to connect disparate data sets at scale in privacy compliant ways. This is what technology has allowed us to do over the past, let's say like 20 years or so, which has been a long time evolution, to be able to really get down to, in some cases, digital one-to-one targeting. So for VideoAmp, either of those really could be a definition of targeting depending on what our clients define. We just help support that. I'd say largely as the industry shifts more toward digital, the latter example or the more acute example of finding, either a household or an aggregate subgroup of households, is really what targeting is going to lean on. Again, there's a possibility today to tie together data sets like Polk and then linear TV data, ACR data, digital data together and find a close enough cohort. And of course, the promise of that is media should become more efficient as a result, right? So you right now we see in many cases depressed CPMs. And so one way to increase CPMs, and this happens certainly in the DDL world, data-driven linear world, where we move beyond a demographic only segment to something more targeted, like in market for a car or buyers of milk or whatever it is. CPMs tended to rise. So you would think that with that efficiency of technology and promise of technology, finding the right audience at the right time and the right content that's a little more targeted, to use the word to define itself, should actually help CPMs as well.
Obviously, the publishers are excited about rising CPMs, and the advertisers and media planners are a little bit conflicted because if they do get more accuracy and greater precision in the buy, they're okay eliminating the waste and reinvesting that wasted budget into
Yeah.
better targeting against what they do have live in the plan. So, how is AI changing that media planning execution? To allow for that. Because, that is the win-win, right? If you sort of let somebody else buy the impressions you don't want and then double down on the impressions you really want.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I have a very specific answer to this. And let me start with the AI component because I know it's on top of everybody's mind, and it's another acronym like targeting or DAI or the other acronyms we throw around the industry that no one's really sure all the time what everyone is saying, but we tend to use that acronym a lot. Um, so the promise of AI is from my perspective this, right? We're able to use a new technology that will allow us to be far more efficient, which should, in theory, free up space and time to do other higher value activities, right? That, in a nutshell, is the evolution of AI. Of course, AI is the foundational, let's call it a technology it's really like a platform, but technology for lack of a better term right now. And that's similar to what you just described in terms of media buyers and CPMs. Right. So the idea is that I'm going back to the segment conversation and tying this into that AI concept that the use of technology frees up space for us to do higher value activities. This is not dissimilar from how we buy, right? If you can buy in a better way and free up budget for higher value activities, it's conceptually the same as AI, right? That or any other technology. So I wanted to like tie those two concepts together, which I think is important. Buyers should actually be, excited for that, right? Because theoretically, they act on behalf of or on as an agent of their clients, right?
Right.
Whether whatever brand that might be. And so they're technically getting far more efficient, eliminating waste like frequency waste. OMG talks about this a lot actually, and bringing better targeting or media planning to market. So it's actually very good for the buyer, and then they can take those monies and distribute it in other places, buy technology services, which we see a lot right now, et cetera. And of course, the on the other side are the publishers, and the publishers of, as you mentioned, are very excited for that because theoretically CPMs should raise as a result of higher quality inventory or targeting. What really will put a constraint around that, though, which is important. The reason why CPMs are being depressed is because of lack of constraint, right? There's too much inventory, especially as things move digital. And this is a tale, that's 20 years old. Digital has a lot of inventory, and not everyone knows where their ad dollars are being moved in the industry because there's a lot of different layers, which is why we see a lot of consolidation now, in my opinion. So, theoretically, the constraint will actually come from things like outcomes in the end, when we start to tie things to an outcome or an attribution report, that kind of thing. Going back to the AI concept, how we view AI, and we've been working within AI for many, many years, probably 5 years or so. We really see that in like three-ish parts. There's data. The first part is data, right? And we tend to amass a lot of data internally at VideoAmp. There's computation of that data, which is you take the data, you bring it together using ML and LLM, and then just provide a better view of it, let's say, or a more efficient view of it. And then there's like an output as the third piece. And so we've been using LLM and ML for many, many years. And we that's why we run a company that's 350 people as opposed to 12,000 people. We're able to use technology like AI efficiently to bring our products and services to market in a way that costs less, candidly, and is far more efficient for the client, which should be good for everyone because measurement shouldn't be 9, 10% of media.
So yeah, sure. Machine learning obviously predated AI, and some people would say that they're close cousins or brethren or whatever.
Sure.
So how does it really differ now? Like, what this current wave is it all about efficiency? Is efficiency in targeting? Is it efficiency on the human side? Like, where are the efficiencies really manifesting themselves?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on the department, candidly. So yeah, you have to get kind of specific in the question. But I'll give you a couple examples, right? So if you're a heavy engineering organization, instead of having to hand code everything now, and anyone can do this in Anthropic or OpenAI. If instead of having to hand code everything, you can have AI build a lot of what you used to hand do in a much faster period of time with fewer people. And that's just what we're seeing today. Anyone that tries out Anthropic and asks Anthropic to build them a website or download an API or do any of the things that we would traditionally hand code. Of course, you have to review the code. You can't just take it at face value because of hallucinations and stuff. But a lot of that stuff that you used to have teams of people working on for weeks and weeks and months, you can now do much, much faster with AI. So the promise of AI is that type of efficiency, which of course um, is disconcerting for a lot of people, right? The initial feedback or the initial feeling when any new technology hits the scene, and this is not any different from the Industrial Revolution, candidly, that happened roughly 100 years ago, really, right? Is that well, hey, my job is at risk, or I am concerned for my my personal place in the industry. But really, what is happening is we're getting more efficient, so you're freeing up those individuals to do again higher value activities, which is the synonym to the advertising segment example I gave a minute ago, where we can spend money now more efficiently as a result. So that's really part of the promise. And then another interesting example, I have a fully enabled AI sales team. And what does that mean in practice? Like, what does that actually mean as opposed to like the marketing buzz headline? In practice, when historically my reps would build out decks for clients, and we of course want to make them very customized and tailored to that particular client. Every client has a different need. Not every client is the same, and so my reps now can pull down data from VideoAmp, put that in like something like an Anthropic or OpenAI, and be able to build a deck that's on our template that's targeted for the client in 2 or 3 minutes, as opposed to taking days and days to build it and reviewing it and sending it out for someone to do art touch-ups and stuff like that. We don't have to do that anymore. And so that frees them up to be out with their clients to actually do more selling, which is another great example. And we can do that very efficiently.
So let me pivot over to premium content, right? There's a lot of video content out there, um, including AI slop video content. But certainly, certain platforms have a unique relationship with their subscribers, and also they really go above and beyond to create the premium content. So how does that manifest itself into how ad inventory should be purchased?
Yeah, I actually believe that the one of the largest differentiators moving forward, again, it provides a type of constraint, is presumably providing the advertising next to a premium content or really a premium brand, right? When you think about like a Paramount, and you think about some of the recent content that they've put out, like Yellowstone, stuff like that, that people, love. And then we have now a whole history behind Yellowstone, content that Paramount's built out that, most people watch. That's premium content. And so if you're a premium brand, what you're going to start to want to do, if you haven't already, which is likely, is putting your ad next to that premium content, because it's brand safe. You know that it has high quality viewers, and those viewers are likely to buy your product in the end. The same goes for sports. I think live events, live news and sports as well, where you have a high quality audience watching that high quality content. And that to me should, be where we see premium CPMs or increase in CPMs over time. Whereas you'll see when you don't know where the ad's running, you're not sure what content it's adjacent to, or to your point, it's, to use your words, AI slop, which is we've all seen it. If you're a high quality advertiser and you're really protective of your brand, do you want your ads running next to that? Probably not, but the reality is it probably does. So what I believe what advertisers and agencies will start to do is really work directly with the premium content providers, and you're actually seeing that in the industry. That's been announced a couple times over the past couple weeks from some big holdcos, where they're going to start to work directly with the publishers to make sure they're securing that premium content and premium ad experience as a result.
So let me switch into something that certainly my media buying team, but even going way back to the early days of digital, seems to be a recurring conversation is about over frequency due to the
Yeah,
fact that you're buying across platforms in some cases, right? So
yeah,
you can't always centralize everything, and to the extent that you can, maybe you do, you know. So whether it's centralizing the ad serving or centralizing the bidding and the ads burn out, right? And so you don't want to have either over frequency ad burnout or just over frequency from the perspective of response rate goes down if you hit the person too much on
for
a
sure.
marginal basis, right? So you really
Yeah.
want to be smart about getting your frequency right. So how's the industry changing that, using ML and AI and better ability to understand, oh, this is the same household. Oh, this is the same person. It's just in a different context or a different place.
Yeah, so I think I'll work backwards, but I think one of the ways the industry is arcing is leaning more heavily on outcomes, and outcomes will be one of the great equalizers of overfrequency. Because to your point, you were describing declining marginal value, and
Right.
anyone that's seen any kind of curve as it relates to attribution knows that you hit a certain amount of impressions and you don't get more bang for your buck, so to speak, after a certain amount of impressions. It's 6 or 7 or 10 or whatever it is, depending on the product. And that's been going on for a while. With ML and AI, you can look at a lot of those data sets en masse. So you can look at larger swaths of data and start to optimize against frequency not record time. Yeah, record time, probably really using AI, because historically you'd have to do that like in Excel spreadsheets, or you'd have to have a backroom group of data scientists hammering away on it, which of course, like, you still need those functions, but AI can do that much faster in ML and LLM models in support of that. So I think attribution or conversion analysis will start to be the great equalizer. There's been a heavy focus on frequency. I think because I think the industry knows that for the sell side, it's been a dirty secret for a long time. There's been over frequency for many years for a variety of
Yeah.
reasons, and I think agencies and holdcos now, with the help of technology, AI being one of them, are able to get more of a handle around over frequency than they have historically because of technologies like AI, and that will continue, which again will provide some constraint to the industry, which theoretically should mean CPM should rise. So it's actually not a bad thing, right? In the end, because really waste is waste, and maybe you make a couple extra bucks on the extra 10 impressions that you provide an advertiser, but in the end, you're not really giving a better advertising experience, and you're not driving more sales as a result. So you imagine if you cut that impression volume in half. It's not just that the half of the revenue is going to go away. What's going to happen is those 10 impressions that are left are going to be twice as much, because they're going to drive as much value in the MMM models in the end, which is what it comes down to on the agency side. So it's a good thing for us to get a handle on frequency and over frequency. I believe that will continue. It'll continue because of technologies like AI, but also data points like attribution or conversion.
So you mentioned outcome-based buying, right? And that
Yeah,
the industry is sort of moving towards that because that gives confidence in the buying team that they're getting what they want, right? They're getting
correct.
the outcome. But other folks might say, oh yeah, but that's just lower funnel, it may be a little bit of demand creation, but it's more demand harvesting, or yeah, it's great for direct response, but it doesn't build brand. So, where's that balance between sort of outcome-based buying and, thinking about the, awareness metrics and all the upper funnel metrics?
Yeah. I think that's a fair argument, actually. And as we know, like all advertising is not created equal, right? If you're Coca-Cola, you're not trying to move product off the shelves necessarily because you have a 99% penetration rate. Everyone buys Coca-Cola. So what you're really trying to do is maintain brand awareness over time. And that's where survey-based technology, for example, is actually very helpful, right? You can look at awareness, intent, favorability, likelihood to purchase, sort of those classic metrics to provide for campaigns like that. And then there there are other campaigns that might be around like a new car line that Toyota is putting out, or Ford, or something like that. There's a new product that's coming out that someone's launching brand new, and they're just putting out a campaign to make sure that they convert as many customers as possible. That's where I think attribution and conversion metrics that are empirical, meaning that we can see the purchases and we can back that purchase all the way to the actual ad impression delivery. And you can tie via the same data set from start to finish, that household, that industry, individual, that cohort to the actual purchase, and do an analysis on that and say, hey, you know what? We know that at 5 impressions, we convert the most. So we're actually going to constrain our media to 5 impressions, or 5 or 6 or 7 impressions, but not 20. And when we do our media buying, and we're going to do that, we know how to now plan, so we can go back to our original point. We can take that segment, say it's females 18 to 24 that make over 100K a year. We know that's our audience that's purchasing. We're going to now use that in our planning function, and we're going to try to find those individuals, and we're going to convert them. I think, again, you can't look at advertising all as the same because they're different ad campaigns for different reasons, which is the history of advertising in a way. But I think that's how, in the latter example, how we'll use AI, ML, conversion metrics to sharpen up the media buying.
Yeah, one quick follow-up question to that. But it wasn't one we discussed earlier, but it just occurred
Yeah.
to me. So obviously, a lot of video targeting can be done at the individual level if it's device-based, and some of it is still household level. So how
Yeah.
do you recommend media buyers think about that offset, right? Because if it's a household of four, you're
Yep.
pretty likely to hit that person, and you can maybe do some additional tweaking on when or what they're watching in the household, which will dramatically increase your odds. So where is AI fitting into that? Sort of like, I'm buying the household, but I'm pretty sure I'm getting the dad, or I'm buying the household and I'm pretty sure I'm getting the mom, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's a great question, and complex, and even goes, I would say, beyond AI, because it actually has legal constraints, right? Too. When you
Hmm.
think about, let's see, like COPA, there's a Child Online Protection Act. So as things become more digital, those types of laws will become more and more relevant, because they're very relevant today, but they could become more relevant throughout the country, for example. And
Right.
so targeting an individual, we can do that today. The industry can do that today broadly on digital. I believe that will become more constrained over time as privacy becomes more of a concern and more of a focus of even, like, say, the federal government, as everything becomes more digital. Not unlike the Cable Privacy Act, that went into account, a couple decades ago. So I believe you'll see more of that over time. So if you're asking for my recommendation specifically, it really depends on the product. Generally speaking, a household is a great proxy for an individual, but of course not the individual only. But if you know that you can target a household because Toyota, again, is putting out a new ad campaign, and dad's in market for a car, or he's coming off lease, and you have that analysis because of data that you can get, publicly, that's fair to sequester, then household level, could be okay, right? getting down to the individual device level or individual person level, also possible, but you'd want to do that in a highly aggregated sense so that you're staying within the bounds of legal constraints and stuff like that. But certainly possible if you can get down to that. Now for linear television or even like ACR based television, most of the persons based is modeled, and
Mm,
that includes out of home. And what does that mean, right? That means that you've really found the household, and you know to a degree who is in the household, and how many individuals. But you're very unsure for the most part how many individuals are watching at one time. It's always a model,
right.
whether that be VideoAmp or anybody else. And so you do your best guess. But the reality is, after the household, the accuracy does not continue to the same degree as it
Right.
has in the household. So, yeah,
Yeah.
so that's why I back up to the household level, and maybe you add a little more frequency on
Yes,
top.
though it's of course, probabilistic that if it's a soap opera, it's slightly more likely to be the mom, and if it's
Correct.
football, it's slightly more likely to be the guy. But there's going to be
Although,
overlap in
although
both
you know,
directions.
with football, football's actually excellent example.
Yeah,
Everyone thought for decades, and there's research on this, that it was mostly men, like
right.
90% men, 85% men. And then what happened was, we did more research as an industry on that, and everyone was like, "Oh man, actually, it's like I don't know if it was 50-50, but it's
Good.
far more women than we
Right.
thought watch football
Yeah,
than men. Like so there's more an equal split." And so you just, you never know. And like new research always comes out around that. Football is actually a great and interesting example, other sports as well.
for sure. So some folks are concerned that AI cherry picking out inventory is going to hurt the publishers,
Oh,
right? But
right.
at the same time, the fact that you'll get a higher yield on the impressions that are picked, is a, it's a tailwind and a headwind happening at the same time. So how do you think
Yeah.
that's going to net out?
AI cherry picking inventory. I
Yeah,
think actually, I mean, when you think about AI, right, it's really just being able, not only, but one of the benefits is that it's able to aggregate data in a way that we haven't been able to historically. And so I actually think with AI becoming smarter, which it is very, very quickly, and decisioning better than humans, candidly, because it doesn't have the same bias as humans.
right.
It'll actually get better. I did an article on this recently that AI, the problem with AI isn't AI, but the humans behind it, right? Like, human beings are inherently biased. We see this in the industry all the time. Someone, buys from someone just that they like rather than something
Right.
that's, a better product. That happens all the time, right? That's not like a secret. AI, as technology gets smarter, AI will find the most efficient path for the media dollars. So I don't think that's something everyone should be afraid of. This goes back to our premium content story, where I think what's going to happen is we're going to revert to a premium content standard, where folks that have built premium content, longtime brands, are going to win out over time rather than the very long tail, unless someone's just buying on reach, in which case it's like, okay, you'll get a little more reach in the long tail of the internet. But are those really the individuals that you want to find? I don't think so. I think in the long term, the premium CPMs are going to go to the people that have created better content.
So yeah, I'd love to drill down a little bit more on that because it's not just reaching those individuals, it's the context of what they're doing while you're reaching them, right? And I
100%.
think that ties into your premium content mindset, right? Because their receptivity to ad messages has to be different based
Yeah.
on what types of content they're engaged in. Is there research that sort of backs that up as to sort of why premium matters more because of the engagement or receptivity to the ads?
I think there's been a bit at VideoAmp. We've been working on that actually, and have been exploring adding a premium content metric to our ad campaigns. And one way to do that is to include something like a creative ID, in the ad campaign. Just for reach and frequency, but then extending that to attribution. Then you can look at total brand, for example, or you can look at total campaign, then you can look at individual sub-campaigns, stuff like that, and then see if the premium content actually drives greater conversion. Right. And our theory is, folks that'll pay for subscription to Paramount Plus or Peacock or Amazon Prime, or actually Amazon Prime's free if you're an Amazon subscriber, but you pay for it one way or another. For any of those subscriptions, if you're willing to pay for it, you're more likely to pay for the product that that's being advertised to, as opposed to something that's extremely long tail. The long tails also, I do think, add an element of positivity for any ad campaign. So I don't want to discount that entirely, but what my thesis is, or our thesis is that the CPMs being depressed, the way to reverse that trend is to look at things like premium content to keep them to raise them as opposed to deflating them.
Yeah, I think the other point that is probably worth making, that maybe not everybody who buys media understands, is that humanity versus potentially a bot, right, is very different in a
Yeah.
paid environment, right?
Yeah.
If it's a paid user ID, then that person's human for sure, 100%.
That's great. That was the TV argument for a very long time, right? Like the TV, it still is. TV brings people. You don't have a lot of invalid traffic on traditional linear TV, which is why the suggestion is the premium CPM should continue.
Right.
You have a whole lot of invalid traffic digital video. Let's say, broadly speaking, digital video has a ton of invalid traffic because it's easier to exploit. But linear TV is much harder for a variety of reasons.
Right. So, let's zoom out. What is the biggest industry shift happening right now that we haven't talked about?
Well, I think we've talked about AI, and it is acutely going to change the industry because it's a sequence of things. So I don't think there's a point in time. Like, digital was already coming. I would say coming for the industry, but the industry was evolving from a traditionally linear industry to a digital industry already, and we saw that happen. And what was the result of that? The result of that was consolidation. We're seeing that throughout the industry. Legacy linear structures can't support the digital infrastructure, which is by definition different. And we are moving that direction. So you're seeing a massive change in the actual infrastructure supporting what was the traditional linear infrastructure. And now throw AI on top of that, you're going to see an accelerated change to the industry that will be, it will be significant. We're seeing that, today. It's allowing people and companies to move at impressive speeds. It's allowing folks to do a lot more with a lot less. So if you're more of a legacy system that has a lot of human bodies supporting a legacy infrastructure, I think it will maybe a difficult time over the next 18 months or so. It won't solve all of the problems. I think you'll still need humans to interact and do what we do every day. This is going to still be important, but it will allow those that use AI to advance faster than those that don't. And those that use AI and advance faster than those that don't will no doubt be the beneficiaries of those wins. And if they're the beneficiaries of those wins, they're going to be the ones that come out on top. And so, listen, that's where I'm focused right now. There's enough changing that those two things are enough for me to focus on. There's always a myriad of other things, but those are the two big ones, in my opinion.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing your wisdom and your point of view on the evolution of the industry with myself and the viewers and listeners. I appreciate you joining.
Anytime, Kevin. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you around the digital hallways.
Sounds good.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.